was just another day in my third grade classroom, or so I thought. The kind of day filled with the usual tasks, checking planners, settling everyone into their seats, firing up Nearpod for an interactive vocabulary activity. We had done this kind of task many times before. Students would respond to a prompt, type in words, and share answers that would appear anonymously on the screen for everyone to see. It felt engaging, safe, even fun. But I didn't know that this day would hold a mirror up to my teaching. Not the strategies I use or the lessons I deliver, but the words I speak without thinking, the tone I carry when I'm in a hurry, and the grace I sometimes forget to give. We were doing a vocabulary word game. I don't even remember the exact question, but I remember that the word one came up. Simple, common, expected. One of my students, a quiet and sensitive girl who usually did well, had typed it wrong. She spelled it phonetically. One, W-O-N. It was a minor mistake, honestly, the kind that could happen to anyone, especially in a moment of pressure. But what did I do? I reacted sharply, without thinking. I remember saying, half joking, half frustrated, "Which third grader doesn't know how to spell this word?" I didn't say her name, I didn't point fingers, but the screen had revealed the answers. The class pieced it together, and then came the laughter. Quick, sharp, innocent perhaps, but enough to cut deep. I moved on quickly. For me, it was just a reaction. For her, it became a memory. That day ended like any other. I packed up, responded to emails, and didn't think twice about that moment until the next morning. When I heard from her parents, she didn't want to come to school. Not because of a fight with a friend, not because of a tummy ache, but because she felt humiliated. My teacher and everyone laughed at me, she told her mother. She said I should know the spelling and that she was disappointed. When her parent told me this, it stopped me in my tracks. I sat down. I felt the heat of shame rise in my chest. How could I have been so careless, so unaware of the way my words carried? That day I learned something my years of training never taught me. Grace is not just about second chances. It's about restraint. It's about remembering that even in small moments, our words shape how children see themselves. And that's what this podcast is about. The day my class taught me grace. We often think that when we snap, it's loud, a burst of anger, a raised voice, a slam door, but sometimes a snap is subtle, a comment delivered without thought, a tone just sharp enough to sting. That's what happened that day. The classroom was calm. There was no chaos, no shouting, no stress, just the steady rhythm of learning. But in the quiet of that moment, my comment cut through. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scold. I just said something that to me was forgettable. But to her, and maybe to others listening, it was unforgettable. That sentence echoed. It echoed in the way the class laughed. It echoed in the shift of her posture, how she pulled her sleeves over her hands, shrank into her seat, tried to disappear. I noticed it in passing but didn't register it and then. I was focused on moving the lesson forward. But that's the thing about words. They outlast the moment. The replay in minds long after we speak them. That night, while I was winding down, probably scrolling through emails or thinking about the next day's lesson, that child was crying at home, telling her parent she felt stupid, telling them she didn't want to come back. Her words, I told the teacher it was just one word, but she said she was disappointed, hit me like a punch to the gut. I don't even remember saying I was disappointed, but isn't that the tricky part? Sometimes it's not what we say, it's how we say it. The expression on our face, the disappointment in our tone, the way we let our expectations overtake our empathy, the way we let our expectations overtake our empathy. And here's where the philosophy of grace comes in. As teachers, we set the tone for how children interpret failure. We can make mistakes feel like part of learning or part of shame. One creates resilience, the other creates fear. I failed that day, not because I made a mistake, but because I didn't notice its impact until it was too late. And that realization left me with heaviness I couldn't shake. But it also gave me a gift. It reminded me that teaching is not about being perfect. It's about being present. And sometimes it's about going back, acknowledging the hurt, owning our words, and showing children that adults are still learning too. This wasn't just a lesson about spelling, it was a lesson about awareness, humility, and the kind of grace that helps both students and teachers grow. The next morning, her seat was empty. That's when the silence hit me. The absence of one child in a busy classroom might not seem like much, but I felt in my gut. I kept glancing toward the door, hoping she would walk in, but she didn't. Later that day, I received the message from the counselor. It was short, factual. Student is emotionally upset, refused to attend school after an incident in classroom yesterday. Parent reported she felt humiliated. That's when the fog lifted. It all came back to me. My tone, the sarcasm disguised as feedback, the laughter of class echoing around her, and suddenly I wasn't the teacher anymore. I was the student, and the lesson was about grace. I sat there reading her words over and over. My teacher and everyone laughed at me because I couldn't spell a word. And just like that, my confidence shattered. How could something so small spiral into something so painful? I wanted to believe it wasn't my fault. Maybe she misunderstood. Maybe she was just sensitive. But deep down, I knew I didn't protect her dignity. I forgot what it meant to be kind before being correct. That day, I learned that shame in a child doesn't always come from punishment. Sometimes it comes from disappointment, especially from someone they admire. And when it happens publicly, the wound runs deeper. We talk a lot about emotional regulation in classrooms. We teach it to students, but do we teach it to ourselves? When we are under pressure to meet curriculum goals, to manage behavior, to keep pace with targets, we forget the soft power we carry with our words. We forget that children carry their identity in fragile shells, and every interaction can either reinforce their worth or chip away at it. That moment became a wake-up call, not just about the student, but about me. I wasn't proud of what I saw in myself. The quick judgment, the misplaced expectations, the failure to pause. But I also knew that shame wasn't the answer. Not for me, not for her. What she needed wasn't just an apology, but a changed version of the adult who hurt her. And what I needed was a mirror, not a microscope. I didn't apologize to the student. I did reach out to her parent. I offered my explanation, shared my regret, and promised to be more mindful. The parent was understanding, kind even, but the guilt didn't fade because deep down I knew I hadn't made things right where it mattered most with the child. It wasn't because I didn't care. In fact, it was the opposite. I cared so deeply that I often forget how heavy my words can be. I believe in preparing students for life, in telling them the truth, in pushing them to face discomfort. But I also realized that day that truth without grace becomes sharp, and children, even the strongest ones, bleed quietly. That moment forced me to look at myself not as the teacher I strive to be, but as the one I was in that instant. I had always thought of myself as a teacher who builds emotional resilience, who challenges students with high expectations, but I saw how, in the name of strength, I had forgotten softness. I didn't say sorry to the child, and I carried that, but I let the experience reshape me. From that day on, I made a silent promise to notice the child before the mistake, to value effort over perfection, and to recognize that small successes deserve loud applause. I didn't need to lower my standards. I just needed to raise my empathy. Now, when I catch myself about to snap, I pause. When I see a child struggling with something basic, spelling, a question, or rule, I remind myself they're not trying to fail. They're trying to belong, to be seen, to be good enough. I still teach them about the harshness of the world. I still tell them the truth, that life isn't always fair, that they will be judged, that effort isn't always rewarded, but I also give them a safe space to stumble. And when they do, I catch them, not with scolding, but with something they might remember longer, compassion. Sometimes now I go out of my way to praise something small, a neat line of handwriting, a thoughtful question, a helping hand they offered a peer, not because I'm softening up, but because I've always realized, not because I'm softening up, but because I've realized how much those words mean, especially when they come from someone they look up to. The irony is, I thought I was teaching them about life, but that day I learned from a child about humility, about grace, and about how it's never too late to become the kind of adult you wish you had when you were younger. Something changed after that incident. Not overnight, not with grand declarations, but slowly, subtly, like the quiet shift of seasons. I began to see the classroom not just as a place of learning, but as a living, breathing space where every word I spoke had the power to either lift or crush a spirit. And I wanted to be someone who lifted. I started listening more, really listening, not just to what students were saying, but to what they weren't. The sighs, the silence, the way a child suddenly stopped raising their hand after being corrected, the way they hesitated before answering a question they once felt confident about. I had missed those signs before, not because I didn't care, because I always focus on performance over presence. Grace taught me to shift my focus, and it showed up in the smallest of ways, like allowing students to explain their thinking instead of rushing to correct them, like acknowledging their effort even the outcome was wrong, like sharing stories of my own failures. Yes, even as a teacher, to show them that mistakes are not a measure of worth, but simply part of the process. One day, a boy in my class forgot his homework 3 days in a row. My old self would have lectured him not unkindly but sternly, making it clear that this wasn't acceptable. But I paused. I pulled him aside quietly and asked, "Is everything okay at home?" That's when the floodgates opened. His parents were going through a difficult separation and his world filled. Homework, understandably, wasn't his top priority. That moment might not have changed his situation, but it changed his experience. He wasn't shamed, he was seen, and sometimes that's all a child really needs. Grace in the classroom doesn't mean letting go of discipline. It means leading with empathy. It means holding high expectations while also offering a hand when they fall short. It means remembering that every child enters your room with a world behind their eyes that you might never fully understand. And grace isn't just for students, it's for us too. There will still be days when we raise our voice. No. There will still be days when we raise our voice, when we misread a situation. There will there will still be days when we raise our voice, when we misread a situation, when we wish we could rewind a moment and do it differently. But that's where grace extends inward. We forgive ourselves, we reflect, and then we try again. Because the truth is, teaching isn't about being perfect, it's about being human. It's about walking into that classroom every day knowing you hold someone's self esteem in your hands and choosing to handle it gently. The day my class taught me grace, I didn't become a new teacher, I become a truer one. To all the teachers and parents listening, I want you to take a breath with me. Just one deep breath. Because this is not a message wrapped in a guilt, shame, or idealism. This is a message rooted in a reality and hope. We are human. We get tired. We run on empathy. We have deadlines, pressure, expectations, and sometimes our own emotional baggage that we carry quietly. And in that fatigue, we sometimes forget we are shaping lives, not just by what we teach, but by how we respond, how we speak, how we make children feel in their most vulnerable moments. The grace I speak of, the grace I learned the hard way, is not about being soft or lowering standards. The grace I speak of, the grace I learned the hard way, is not about being soft or lowering standards. It's about creating a space where children can be whole, where they're allowed to learn not just math, science, and language, but also resilience, self worth, and courage. where they're not reduced to test scores or behavior charts, but understood in the full context of their growth. As a parent, your child looks to you for stability, understanding, and belief. And sometimes, just like us teachers, you're doing all you can and still feel like it's not enough. But here's the truth. You don't have to get it perfect every day. What matters is that you show up with love, with reflection, and with the willingness to grow alongside your child. As a teacher, you might have dozens of students, each with their own backstory, their own struggles, their own personalities, and in this world of lesson plans and classroom management, it's easy to slip into autopilot, but every so often, look into their eyes. Really look and remind yourself these are not just students, these are future humans shaped by your presence. We all have a story like mine, maybe different in detail, but similar in lesson. A moment when we wished we've paused before reacting. A moment when we realized we had more powerful than we knew. Power to wound or to heal. If we can use those stories not to shame ourselves but to grow, then we're ready on the right path. And remember, grace is a cycle when we extend it to others. Children, colleagues, even strangers, we make the world a little softer. And when we extend it to ourselves, we become more resilient, more reflective, and more compassionate. That's the kind of classroom I want to build. That's the kind of world I want to live in. So, to every parent, every teacher, and every listener who has stayed with me through this episode, I invite you to carry this question with you. Who needs my grace today? It might be your child, it might be your student, it might be you. And that's where the journey begins. Thank you for spending this time with me on Classroom Nexus. If this story touched something within you, I hope it becomes more than just a passing thought. Let it be a let it be a reminder that every day we're given another chance to choose grace, to pause before reacting, and to grow with the children we guide. If today's episode resonated with you, share it with a fellow teacher or parent who might need to hear it too. And don't forget to follow Classroom Nexus for more real stories, honest reflections, and conversation that matter. Until next time, take care, lead with heart, and remember, it's never too late to show a little grace.